Steve, there's a lot to talk about on the recruiting side of things. Before we do that, though, I would be remiss with the final starting today. And with you being the number one Pacers fan in all of sports media, Pat McAfee right behind you at number two, how many games is this thing going? How many is it going to take for the Pacers to get it done against OKC?
Ooh, man, I would love to come on here and predict the Pacers winning the finals, winning the NBA championship, first appearance on this stage in 25 years. I think we're the underdog coming into this series. I would put the Thunder in 6 right now, but certainly full on supporting the Pacers. I've never worn a hat on camera in my entire career. I'm a get off my lawn guy. Old school thought process of how people should look on camera and act and carry themselves. But producer Caden back there, a huge Knicks fan, and I didn't talk any trash to him the entire series because I just wanted to make sure the Pacers would get it done. They got it done. They're going to the NBA Finals. They absolutely own the Knicks, and hopefully they can play just as well against the Thunder, the best defensive team in the NBA.
Well, as you're saying that, our producer, Caden Smith, is nodding his head like, yep, no trash was talked. It was totally a gentleman sort of series. But now that y'all are in the finals, I know there's probably a fair amount of investment on both sides of this camera here. For
the Pacers have been the second best team in the NBA since January. The Thunder have been the best. These are the two best teams in the league playing in the finals. The NBA is awesome. They actually put the ball in the basket. And people should tune in for some great basketball over these next 2 weeks.
We can't get an RPM for the Pacers, though, for the series? No Pacers in 7?
Look, I think the Pacers can win. We're 0-2 against the Thunder this year, but playing better. Again, been the second best team in the NBA since January. The Thunder are just so good defensively. But look, Pacers, a lot of confidence, a lot of excitement around this franchise, and in the finals for the first time in 25 years. Let's go. Let's beat the Thunder.
Let's go, baby. Pacers in 7. We'll call our shot here on this side. We'll go Pacers in 7 for the hard counts prediction. But let's get to some recruiting. USC, rocking and rolling this summer. I feel like every time we have a segment on recruiting on our show, it's talking about how USC has regained the number one spot in the class, or they just got a massive commitment or got a massive flip. Last week, landing the number one tight end in America, Mark Bowman out of Southern California. This is a big get for USC on the football side, but a lot of conversation has started in the college football community, if you will, around the NIL side of things with Mark Bowman. Like, just what's your assessment of the Mark Bowman USC NIL story right now, Steve?
Well, USC is the most powerful NIL program in the country right now, by my estimation, from what I've seen on the trail, the opportunities being presented to these coveted targets on and off the field. Programs are struggling to compete with what USC is offering in that sphere. So right now, there's a lot of excitement around the program because of that, and they're able to rally fast on some recruitments, beating Georgia and Texas for Mark Bowman, going into the state of Ohio and beating Ohio State and Oregon for Albert Hill IV. USC cannot be taken lightly in any blue chip recruitment. Now the Trojans, they're going to a system where if you commit to USC, you can no longer take visits. So Xavier Griffin, 5-star linebacker from the Peach State, he was one that wanted to continue through his process. Could USC have wanted out in the end? You know, who knows? But they're no longer in the picture for Xavier Griffin. But from an NIL standpoint, most powerful program in college football right now.
That's super interesting you say that, because we think of these NIL big dogs in the space, and we think about Oregon. I know Miami gets mentioned, but USC right now, it doesn't seem like it was always the discussion for the Trojans. It felt like a lot of people on the college football recruiting, big picture, we're talking about, hey, USC, they could eventually be this in LA, and you would think if 2 and 2 equals 4, they could be an NIL power. What changed with USC on the NIL front, Steve?
Well, I just think the investment in the program, the infrastructure, the organization. Obviously USC hired Chad Bowden from Notre Dame this offseason. Chad was an integral part in helping Notre Dame build its team into one that competed and played in the national title game this past fall. But Dave Emmerich was key in their front office, for lack of better words, where it came over there with Lincoln Riley and got things off and running there. I think Coach Riley's done a good job of exciting the people around the program and building that up and getting people to invest. They're building new facilities. And look, we can sit here and talk about NIL, and obviously I think that's what, in the end, why they're winning a lot of these recruiting battles, but you don't get to start the race if you don't have good things to sell on the football field. And Coach Riley's track record, 3 college football playoffs, Heisman Trophy winners, great offense, USC showing improvement last season. They hired some great assistant coaches, some of the best in college football, led by Deontin Lynn, defensive coordinator, gone to the NFL and landed guys like Coach Henderson and Coach Ryan. They put together a phenomenal coaching staff, and then they have the infrastructure, what I call your NIL capability, to finish off these recruitments and win them out. Kenye Pepe, coveted offensive tackle, also one of the jewels of this USC class. I think that was another one where once they put all their cards on the table, on the field, development, and then NIL, they locked him up and beat Miami, among others, for him.
And I think that's the thing that gets missed in the whole NIL discussion, just in college football in general, especially for USC, though. You have a guy in Lincoln Riley who is arguably, on any given year, the best play caller in the sport. You got Dan Lynn, who's an NFL caliber defensive coordinator. You got the guy who coached Aaron Donald as your defensive line coach. Like, there's a lot of pieces here outside of NIL that would make USC attractive. Oh, and by the way, it's USC with that brand and that logo and their history. So that whole thing is interesting to me. I think if you're a jaded USC fan, though, Steve, your immediate thought as you climb up these rankings, you think back to last year, you think about the work they did in the southeastern part of the United States and how high they were in the rankings. You say, well, this is nice. I don't want to get invested emotionally because it's modern college football and last year and how this whole thing works. These kids are going to decommit. What would be your response to that, to the jaded USC fan, the concerned USC fan that's worried this is all just smoke and mirrors and early rankings hype?
Well, you and I both know anything can happen on the recruiting trail every year.
Sure.
I write the same stories with just new names. And so USC will have to go out this fall and show that this is a program that is on the rise, that can compete for championships to get some of these guys to the finish line. But I also think that they've put some things in place to allow them a better opportunity to hang on to these guys throughout the cycle, the no-visit policy, and then again, the NIL opportunities on and off the field right now. These are the most powerful opportunities that some of these young men have, and that's also why they're in the fold.
Yeah, and I think the fact that a lot of these guys are from Southern California too. We talk about it on our show. It's a lot more dating in proximity as opposed to dating long distance. A lot easier to keep that relationship intact, Steve, when you're not doing the phone calls at different hours and you're not having FaceTimes. You're actually getting together in person, having guys on campus. So that whole part of this is intriguing. But I'm with you. It's anything can happen, but USC right now in a good spot in the current team industry recruiting rankings. But let's take a pivot from one coast to the other. Miami's had a great summer so far, a great spring moving into the summer. What's their perception right now on the recruiting trail as it pertains to those other schools in the state? Your Floridas, your Florida States, heck, UCF with how they're operating in the Power Four now. Where does Miami sit in your mind relative to those schools and how they're perceived?
Well, each year under Mario Cristobal, this is a football team that's improved. They were right there on the cusp of winning the ACC last year. What they did in the transfer portal, how they've recruited on the trail, they're certainly in the discussion and one of the favorites to win the ACC this year. I know Clemson's loaded, and that's a team that is in the conversation to win the national championship. But Miami's a program that they'll have to go through to win that league, and they certainly have a chance to make the college football playoff, which is the goal. And look, they showed already this cycle that they can go out and win elite recruiting battles on the trail. It doesn't get any better than Jackson Cantwell, number 1 player in the land, 5-star offensive tackle from Nixa, Missouri. And this was a back and forth. I talked to Jackson after he made his decision. Miami led in March. Georgia led in April. Miami got it done in May. And certainly, again, the NIL component, Miami was able to have the infrastructure to win the Jackson Cantwell recruitment. But you're not even in the discussion if you can't prove to Jackson Cantwell that you can't make him a player that has the opportunity to hear his name called in the top 5 of the NFL draft. He thinks Alex Mirabal is the best offensive line coach in the country. The emphasis that Mario Cristobal puts on offensive line play and his track record as a coach with guys like Jonah Williams and Penei Sewell, that resonated with him. And then I asked Jackson Cantwell about did how did things change in May, and how did Miami get it back? And he said, they just out-recruited everybody. He heard from Miami more than he heard from Oregon, more than he heard from the Georgia coaches. And that was something that was important to him, that personal connection, that daily interaction, getting to know them. And every day, Mario Cristobal, Alex Maribal, and other staff members were in contact, making him feel comfortable. So Georgia led for more of that recruitment than Miami did if you talk about the 3-year overall process. And if it was an old school recruitment, he might have committed to Georgia earlier, but it wasn't an old school recruitment. We're in a modern era, and people are making NIL offers, and Miami's not bidding against themselves. They didn't just throw out a number for the hell of it. There were other numbers on the table. There was real estate opportunities. There were all kinds of things that Jackson Cantwell and his camp, his family, the folks at Rosenhaus went through to get to the decision for him to play at Miami. And he's certainly getting life-changing money, as Darren Heitner tweeted about Jackson Cantwell's decision before he announced. But he's also going to a place that he thinks can make him the best offensive lineman in the country for a staff that out-recruited everybody down the stretch.
I'm glad you said it that way, because not just is the NIL, part of it, but like Mario Cristobal, even before NIL was a thing in modern college football, he was still known as like one of the better recruiters before he was a head coach, when he was at Bama, when he was at Oregon. Like, this guy lives and breathes recruiting, and that was one of the big things that Miami fans got excited about when he was coming to Miami to be their head coach. So obviously NIL is going to be a part of it if you're the number one player in America, but to act like that was the only thing, I think maybe folks are kidding themselves just a little bit when it comes to that discussion. But Steve, they landed the top player in America. What's the path for Miami in your mind to end up having the top class in America when National Signing Day rolls around here in December?
Well, they're getting the right guys on campus, JD. Just even look at this past weekend. 3 5-stars on campus, the number one receiver in the land, Tristan Keys. He's committed to LSU out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He's been to Miami twice now since he gave the Bayou Bengals a verbal. Now, he said it's going to be hard to flip him from LSU, and LSU gets the last official visit of the summer, June 20th. But Miami's already shown the chops that they can rally in a recruitment, and he likes his time spent in Miami. The family feels at home when they're around Cristobal, Kevin Beard, and the staff. They like the offense. Was it the number one offense in the country? If it wasn't, it was ranked pretty dang high from a passing standpoint.
Yeah.
Lamar Brown, 5-star defensive lineman. A lot of buzz around LSU and Texas A&M throughout his recruitment, but Miami coming on strong following a visit. Hurricanes also in it for 5-star edge rusher Anthony Tank Jones. They had the number 3 running back in the country per the On3 industry, Derek Cooper, back on campus. That recruitment's going to be a marathon, but Miami's got the shoes to run that race all the way to the end. Georgia, Ohio State. He took an official visit to Auburn, some of the other contenders for him. But Miami, they're in on elite players. They're going to have big-time guys on campus throughout the summer, and they're going to land their fair share. Where does that put them? Will it be top 5? Will it stay in the top 10? I think it's going to be a class that's going to keep them in contention for the ACC championship, but they're certainly on the short list of schools you have to consider with an opportunity to finish number 1.
And that's the thing that you mentioned, I think, at the top of this segment, is as Miami continues to trend upward on the field, feels like that's the only thing that is really missing from Miami being able to be in that top 5, maybe even number 1 class in America when it's all said and done, depending on how things shake out. Like, if they go win the ACC and make the college football playoff, I can't imagine that hurts things when it comes to those final rankings.
Look, when we talk about USC at the top of the show like we did, Miami, these are programs that have had skill players, have had some decent quarterback play. They needed to change the mindset and culture of their programs to compete on a national level, and that's being physical around the line of scrimmage. USC was a powder program for a while. That's what Lincoln Riley is trying to change with that Trojans program, getting tougher around the line of scrimmage. That's how good Caleb Williams was that first year at USC. They make the conference title game with no physicality really whatsoever when comparing them to other championship caliber teams. They lose to Utah in the Pac-12 championship game when Caleb gets hurt. But they've recruited the offensive line well, big bodies, young players that are starting to develop within their program. They've hit big on the defensive line. Jamie and Winfield, a big recruiting win for USC this cycle. In Miami, anytime Mario Cristobal's around, you're going to have like a meathead type of personality to your football team at the point of attack. It is something very important to him to be tough at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and investing in that, creating your identity around that. And it takes time. We saw Texas do that. Steve Sarkisian has been able to flip a Texas team that was soft for so many years, that struggled to get players drafted around the line of scrimmage. Now Texas's defense is flying around and hitting hard and making plays behind the line of scrimmage, and they're getting offensive linemen drafted early in the draft. They're getting front seven defensive players drafted. They're going into SEC country and winning recruiting battles against national title contenders. USC's doing that. Miami's doing that. Now they got to get the best out of these guys. It's not easy, and Texas is still trying to find 2 more wins itself at the end of the season. But Miami and USC trying to change a culture, a toughness in their program, which gives them a chance to win ball games against good teams at the end of the year.
And I'm glad you made the call to Texas there, Steve, because I think with Miami, anytime you mention them this part of the year having on-field success for the following season, it's always, you're just talking about the big brand. You just know Miami gets clicks, so therefore you're going to go ahead and project success. It's like, no, actually, they've had success year in and year out, in an upward trajectory under Cristobal. That was the same thing with Sark. It was like Texas always underachieves, and now we're sitting here in a world where they've made the playoff each of the last 2 years and been a play away from having a shot to go play for a national championship. But, Steve, as we move now into the June and eventually July months in the recruiting calendar, this is the part of the year where I think a lot of the college football fans, even if you don't follow recruiting super closely, start to tune in a little bit more intently maybe to the recruiting cycle. What are you watching maybe from a big commitments point of view, or guys that are still on the board that are going to potentially shape these classes? What's Steve Wiltfong monitoring here in these crucial months of June and July?
Well, for me, I just start to see which programs are going to put themselves in position to finish with the number 1 class in the country. We've already talked about USC. They're atop the standings right now. They're going to have a chance to finish there at the end of the cycle. LSU, they certainly have the juice on the board with some of the prospects that are still out there for them to finish number 1. They got a great chance to land 5-star offensive tackle Emmanuel Iheanacho, and they're in a dogfight with Oklahoma for one of the most prized quarterbacks in the land that's uncommitted, Bo Bentley out of Salina, Texas. I would give LSU the edge right now. He's visiting Oklahoma this weekend. I think the Tigers have the momentum coming off his official visit this past weekend. Ohio State, the defending national champs, they're at number 3. They got rocking and rolling right after they won the title. That's when their coaching staff pivoted to recruiting. And when they lock in on top targets, they're tough to beat. A name to keep an eye on for Ohio State right now, Luke Wafel. Now, Penn State and Texas certainly in there, USC and Florida as well. But Ohio State had Luke Wafel, one of the more physically impressive prospects in the class, regardless of position. Looks like an Ohio State defensive end. He was there this past weekend. The buzz says Ohio State is setting the pace, but that's going to be a war. Kirby Smart's finished in the top 3 of the On3 recruiting standings. Every year he's been the head coach at Georgia. So they're looking for a 10-year in a row top 3 class. They sit at number 5. I think A&M's a program to watch this summer, beginning this weekend with the 5-stars and elite prospects they're having on campus this weekend. And Alabama is another school that's certainly in the mix to finish with the number 1 class. They're coming off a huge weekend, big weekends every weekend for Alabama. And then when's Texas make a run? They're number 14 right now. But the way they closed last year, their infrastructure, what they have off the field, along with the on-field product, we know the Longhorns are eventually going to make a run. And same goes with Michigan. Michigan closed strong, finished with a top 10 class. They're at number 17 right now. I think that they're going to push their way into the top 10. Big summer coming up for them with guys like Savion Hyder, the number 1 running back in the country, and Carter Meadows, On3's number 6 overall player. He is visiting later this summer, and Michigan is one of the front runners for him. Then one other school, JD, I want to shout out is Notre Dame. The Irish, they sit at number 4 right now in the On3 industry standings. They're landing the majority of their top targets. There's not a more down-to-earth head football coach than Marcus Freeman. His message really resonates with Notre Dame's targets. and he embraces all of Notre Dame's strengths that other people would maybe pose as weaknesses. The academic standards, having to live with people that aren't football players. Those are things that Marcus Freeman thinks are important and good for top recruits. So when they visit campus, they don't hear it as a negative. They hear it as a positive. Look, we're going to hold you accountable off the field as well as on the field. But when you get through it, we graduated over 90% of our players. And you're going to have a Notre Dame degree in this network. And yes, you might have to live with J.D. Piquel, special teams warrior. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey.
You may have to live with,
Come on now.
average Joe student, but he might run a Fortune 500 company in 10 years. And that was your roommate at Notre Dame, right? So those are things that they're selling for with the Irish program, along with they had a chance to win the national championship. They were right there with Ohio State. They had to make some adjustments in that title game, but in that fourth quarter, they had a chance to win the game, get back into it, and it was a heck of a football game, and Notre Dame's right there as a national title contender, and they're recruiting at a level to keep it rolling for years to come. They have one of the best offensive line classes in the country. They have arguably the best defensive line class in the country right now with Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Ewatati. One's a 5-star. The other is in the top 100 in the On3 rankings, so those are two dynamic, high upside pass rushers, and they continue to crush recruiting in the secondary. Mike Mickens is arguably the best assistant coach in the country. What he's done with Notre Dame's secondary, the way he recruits, he was the recruiter of the year nationally in my On3 unofficial article that I wrote at the end of the season. He was the first name I mentioned for the way he recruited his top targets and landed them. And Notre Dame continues to load up in the secondary, which allows them to play the style of defense they want to play because they hit big and evaluate and develop well in the secondary. So Notre Dame, I don't think they're going anywhere either. And it's going to be an exciting summer on the trail for all the programs I mentioned.
Well, one, I didn't know that was a thing at Notre Dame. I didn't know that athletes early on lived with, we called them at Cornell, NARPs, non-athletic regular people. I don't know if that's the phrase at Notre Dame. I've also heard muggles be a term people throw around. I don't know. Again, I don't know. Two, I rebuke that, all right? All unofficially, special teams leading tackler in the Ivy League, because I don't know who else had what tackles in the conference, but I'm going to go ahead and unofficially claim that. Three, see, for Notre Dame, I would think that them playing for a national championship, them beating Georgia, them beating Penn State, would just change the optics, too, around how people perceive them. Is that something you've picked up on the recruiting trail with how these recruits talk about, what Notre Dame is now in, the modern era under Marcus Freeman? Feels like they're cool again.
Well, more than anything, and speaking of modern era, I do think Notre Dame is well-oiled in the NIL space and allows them to be in the mix for top recruits and top transfer portal guys like Sam Hartman, then Riley Leonard. There's a lot of competition to get those quarterbacks out of the portal. And so Notre Dame, they got some infrastructure. They got some ability in that realm. But my biggest takeaway from Notre Dame's season, because anyone that really follows college football would have put them as a top 10 program overall, going back to the Brian Kelly era with the way they played and the way that players would hear their names called in the NFL draft, and then just how good some of those guys are on Sundays. But Notre Dame's run to the national title game, what it did for their program more than anything from a recruiting standpoint is it made Marcus Freeman famous. He was a guy that maybe wasn't a household name that people saw week in and week out and got a chance to see what a real dude he is, how he's how he stands behind what he believes in, and how relatable he is, a former player at Ohio State that understands what these players are going through as a former blue chipper, his message, how eloquent he is, what he believes in, and how it's in line with Notre Dame. But now he's recognizable. All the recruits in the country know who he is. Their families saw him on TV week in and week out. And people around the Notre Dame program knew his personality, know him as a real guy. Hell, going back to his time at Purdue and some of the other stops, him being in high schools, he would just sit and have genuine conversations with high school coaches for an hour and a half before moving to the next stop. It was never, hey, I'm here to check out J.D. Piquel and anyone else you have. Check the box. Maybe we'll offer, maybe we won't, and I'm in and out. No, he was spending genuine time with high school coaches. He's just a great communicator. He's very excited about wherever his feet are. And now recruits, when they get a call from Marcus Freeman or offer from him, it's different because he's more famous than he was before that run.
That's really interesting you say that, because if I'm a recruit or a recruit's parents and I watch him in some of those in-game interviews against Georgia or against Penn State when ESPN does the breaks in between the game, I hear him speak. I'm like, oh, I want to go play for that guy. I want that guy to mold my high school student into a young man. I want to play for that guy, go be an NFL prospect and be a part of the culture he's building there. Steve, one more team I want to get your thoughts on here.
There's just phone calls that mean
Go ahead,
more,
sorry.
JD, there's just phone calls when a recruit's going through their process. Every offer is exciting. Every scholarship opportunity is cool. But there's just calls like when Kirby Smart wants to talk to you at 1 o'clock on Tuesday. That register is different, right? And you earn that through winning and your prestige level. And Marcus Freeman, all the airtime he got on TV, being able to show who he is as a person. Now, when recruits talk to him on Pot of Gold Day, when Notre Dame's offering everybody in the 2026 class on St. Patrick's Day that's at the top of their board, or they're getting their weekly call with him as a top target, it just means more because he just has more stature. He was always the same guy, but now more people are aware of him and who he is, and the fame level has gone up for Marcus Freeman.
No, I mean, that's a tremendous point. And for some reason, Kirby and Marcus both must have lost my number. I never got a call from those guys. But, Steve, one more thing I want to get your thoughts on here. Feels like Auburn always makes a move at this point in the summer. Any buzz around them, anything you're watching with them, or maybe something you want to talk about relative to the Tigers and what Hugh Freeze has got going on out there on the recruiting trail?
Yeah, Auburn is in on a lot of the blue chippers that we talked about, but I think they're in the 3, 4, 5 position for many of these guys going into the summer because, look, we're going into Hugh Freeze's third year. He closed strong that very first cycle where Auburn flipped a lot of dudes going into his first season. They've had 2 straight top 10 classes. They've done a good job in the transfer portal, but the honeymoon is now over. And the recruits in the 2026 class holistically want to see what Auburn looks like on the field this fall. They got to have a great year. And I compare them to Florida last year. Florida was in the 3, 4, 5 spot for a lot of their top recruits. They had visit in the summer, and a lot of those guys committed elsewhere in the summer, but ended up committing to Florida after watching their awesome November to close the season. And now the Gators are a top 10 prediction for the coming into this season, or a preseason top 10 ranking coming into the 2025 campaign. Auburn's in a similar situation. It's time to put up or shut up. No more selling a dream where we're at as a program. It's year 3. You're coming off 5 and 7. Where are you at? You went into the portal. You did great at quarterback. You landed a 5-star quarterback. You got a lot of dynamic playmakers in the wide receiver room. You've upgraded around the trenches. You've tried to add bigger bodies in the secondary. Now it's time to go play ball. And if Auburn shows improvement on the field this year, get some big wins, I think they'll finish with their 3rd straight top 10 recruiting class. If they don't, we'll see.
The plot thickens. Yeah, you never want to be in that position where it's hey, let's prove it on the field, and then you end up with where are we now in the recruiting world and the on-field, all those things. Never want to leave it to chance or have some ambiguity there after a year like this, in a spot like this heading into the season. Steve, appreciate all your time. Where are we watching the game tonight? Where are we locking in? Where's the Timothy Chalamet of the Pacers locking in tonight?
Well, I love watching the game with my kids, so we'll be at home watching the ball game. And this game's starting off at 8:30. Kind of how I started off the show, saying I don't like hats on camera, but Pacers in the NBA Finals is a rare occasion where I could come in and gloat to Caden Smith, producer of this show, The Hard Count. Wanted to rub it in a little bit because I didn't talk any trash during the series. Watching it at home with my kids, but this game's starting at 8:30. We all know damn well it can start at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
Because now I got to make a decision. How late can my kids stay up?
When is bedtime typically? Like, when is the Wiltfong family usually turning out the lights as a household? Is it like 10 o'clock?
Well, it's summer
or more
now.
8:30, 9 o'clock operation?
It's summer, so 10 o'clock is that good area. Butler basketball camp going on right now for the Wiltfong boys, and so it's an exciting but busy week as they go play ball inside Hinkle Fieldhouse every day, historic Hinkle Fieldhouse. But the Pacers are on, and that's new, and it's just a ton of excitement around here for Pacers basketball in the community.
Let's go, man. Core memories, recruiting, talking Pacers basketball, the best in the business On3 Steve Wiltfong. Catch him on the On3 Recruits channel, doing tremendous work with Josh Newberg on the Inside Scoop, and also the Wiltfong freaking whip around, man, for all things college football recruiting. And maybe just a little sprinkle of the future NBA Finals champions, potentially. Steve, appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much.
Hey, you predicted them in 7. We'll see y'all later.